Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Q&A webinar for the upcoming Complementary Challenge. We're going to give everyone just a couple of minutes to keep joining while people are getting off of any other meetings. So we're going to kick it off at about 2 or 3 minutes after. While people are joining, please head in the chat, tell us where you're joining us from, who you're representing. And also we have a poll being released. We'd love to hear how you heard about this webinar. We're really excited to have you here. So please let us know, and we'll start in just a couple of minutes. Okay. 26 answers. Thank you all so much. All right, feel free to keep answering that. I am going to go ahead and kick off our webinar today. So once again, thank you all and welcome to the Q&A webinar for the Complementary Challenge. I'm Dan Wrights, project manager here at HeroX for this particular competition. With us today, we have a bunch of amazing speakers from the NIH Common Fund that are going to be giving a background and overview of the competition, as well as responding to your questions about this challenge. So before we get started, I do just have a couple housekeeping items. First and foremost, I'm sure you already saw this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted in the challenge updates tab. I'm going to show you that later on in this Q&A. So you don't need to worry about taking notes. Please stay engaged and you don't have to memorize it. If you are unfamiliar with Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, there are a couple different engagement buttons. There's a chat button and a Q&A button. For all of your questions, please submit those in the Q&A button, and we will do our best to get to all of those in order before the end of this session. The chat button does work for communication across the group, but it is very easy to lose questions in that chat. So please make sure you submit them during the Q&A function. Okay, and that is it for me. So what I think we should really do is kick this off and get some great introductions going with our speakers today. Margaret, I will pass to you to kick us off with that.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good morning, afternoon to everyone. We again like to extend a welcome to you for joining us for this Q&A panel discussion regarding the Complement Animal Research and Experimentation Challenge. I'll start off with introducing myself. I'm Margaret Ochochinska. I'm a program leader in the Office of Strategic Coordination at the Common Fund at NIH, and I'm joined here by my panelists, the additional panelists, Joni Rudder, who is the director of the National Center of Advancing Translational Sciences, NCATS. And I'm also joined by Dan Tagley, who is the director of the Office of Special Initiatives, the National Center of Advancing Translational Sciences, NCATS as well. And later we will also be hearing from the panelists, including myself, Dan, and Dan Shaughnessy from the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, and also Tony Kirilusha, who's a program leader in the Common Fund as well. And we will also be joined by Taylor Gilliland as a panelist from the National Institute of Bioengineering, Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Joni for opening remarks. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Margaret. And welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I also wanted to extend a welcome to all of you to join us here for the NIH Complement Animal Models and Experimentation. So we like to say it's complementary. And this is a discussion today about the Complementary Challenge webinar to discuss how we can start to shape the future of biomedical research through developing new approach methodologies, or NAMs, as I'll call them in this welcoming and introduction comment today. And I really just want to thank all of you for participating today and bringing your interest in this challenge, as well as I also want to extend a thank you to the working group who helped develop the challenge and came together today to help answer any questions from the community as well. So for all of you who are on the call today, the NIH is in the process of conducting planning activities for this complementary program, which is really aimed at developing, standardizing, and validating and using NAMs that will more accurately model human biology and would essentially complement, or in some cases even replace, traditional models and transform the way we do basic translational and clinical sciences. And so this prize competition will play an important role in shaping this potential program as we think about it over the coming several months, and really developing it and moving it forward in hopefully a way that we can. So why are we doing this now? Well, the 21st century has been a time of accelerated technological advances with increasing use of new and evolving methodologies, including things like bioengineering technologies for treatments, such as CRISPR-Cas9, a single-cell sequencing technology, phenotypic profiling, and even cyborg tissues that we've heard about more recently. And there's also areas of human clinical data advancements that have taken place, the use of electronic health record data or digital twins or sensors and geospatial mapping, as well as computational methods like multi-scale modeling, cognitive algorithm development, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and even quantum approaches. And there have been also advances in complex in vitro systems, such as microphysiological systems, such as tissue chips, organoids, and the use of induced pluripotent stem cells. And each of these fields have really independently fundamentally changed the way that biomedical science is being conducted, but collectively, they can really revolutionize our thinking, our approaches, and ultimately advancing the biomedical enterprise for the decades ahead. And so what we would like to do here is in thinking about the NAMs and including things like in chemico, in vitro, and in silico approaches, because these have proven to be really valuable and invaluable tools in basic and clinical research. We hope that they can even continue to help us better understand human health and disease, help us elucidate mechanisms, and study the efficacy and toxicity of novel therapeutics as well. So now we need to sort of poke the field a little bit more, if you will, and set our sights higher. We need to understand if and how these models can fundamentally change the way regulatory and translational and clinical sciences are done to help us even bring more therapies to all people more quickly. And NAMs hold tremendous promise in our ability to do this. While traditional animal models continue to be extraordinarily vital to advancing scientific knowledge, the NAMs offer unique strengths that will also hold tremendous promise in doing exactly sort of this idea of bringing those more treatments to people more effectively. And for example, they can offer ways to help us when used correctly and or in combination, they can help us expand the toolbox for researchers to answer really previously difficult or unanswerable biomedical research questions. And specifically with these novel approach methodologies, it's very critical to understand the right questions that we're asking to answer and to answer those questions. And it really is about the research questions that are going to matter here. And so we need your help to highlight those key questions and to help us think about those much more broadly so that we can make headway. And in a sense, we're at a watershed moment in the history of treatments and even cures, with discovery and development of innovative and definitive therapeutics that are on the rise. And with also the FDA Modernization Act 2.0, this act is putting us really in a good position to be a game changer in legislating that regulatory approvals for therapeutics may be registered without animal studies. And so this is really a moment where novel approach methodologies can really start to be tested and gain some ground in helping us think through how to become more efficient in that therapeutic development pipeline. So we really need your help. The complementary challenge is needed to generate innovative ideas that will help demonstrate new ways of using NAMs that could be used to help us also inform the development of this potential Common Fund program. So that's why we're here today, and we're hoping to answer a lot of your questions that you might have. I want to thank the team who's here today to do that, and thank you for your interest. And I'll turn it over here now to Margaret back again to get the program started. Thank you again so much.
Thank you very much, Joni. Next slide, please. So I'll briefly go over the agenda. So we had the opening remarks. Thank you very much. We'll briefly go over some background materials and then go over the complementary challenge overview, timeline, eligibility, submission process and requirements, evaluation criteria, and then we'll move on to a challenge site demo, a demonstration live to show you how to enter your submissions. Then we'll follow that with a live Q&A session with our panelists today. And again, just a reminder, please type your questions you may have throughout the webinar into the Q&A box. Questions submitted through the Q&A box will be answered at the end of the presentation, and participants should remain muted, and the webinar will be recorded and made publicly available after this, after today. Next page, please. So briefly, I wanted to provide a background on why we are here. So as Joni explained, we're in the strategic planning process for a potential Common Fund program. So I will provide a bit of background on what the Common Fund is. So in 2004, the NIH roadmap was launched. And in 2006, Congress unanimously reauthorized the NIH and established the Division of Program Coordination, Planning, and Strategic Initiatives, DPCIPSI, within the Office of the Director and the NIH Common Fund to provide a dedicated source of funding to enable trans-NIH research. Next slide, please. And so the Common Fund, the purpose of the Common Fund is to move the NIH mission forward faster by supporting bold scientific programs that catalyze discovery across all biomedical and behavioral research, also advances areas of biomedical and behavioral research important to the missions of multiple NIH institutes and centers. And also it is meant to spur subsequent biomedical advances that otherwise would not be possible without an initial strategic investment. Next slide. And so the features of the Common Fund programs and how they're used to catalyze biomedical discovery include making substantial investments in time-limited, goal-driven programs that significantly change the trajectory of biomedical research by accelerating emerging science, removing research roadblocks, enhancing the research workforce, and supporting high-risk, high-reward science. Next slide. And so just overall, the Common Fund Science and Management are a collaborative process. So this is why we're here, because scientists from diverse disciplines provide input as we plan new programs. So the purpose of the challenge is, as Joni explained, is to do this crowdsourcing for potential ideas that can really be game-changing in this area of science. Also, researchers will participate in interdisciplinary consortia to tackle shared goals. That's sort of the mission of future Common Fund programs. And the leadership and staff from the Institute Centers and the Office of the Director work together to design funding opportunities and oversee the project. So again, the challenge will be used to inform potential ideas for future Common Fund projects and initiatives related to the complementary program. And with that, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Dan Tagley, to go over the challenge goals and logistics.
Thank you, Margaret. Pleasant day to everyone. So as you have already heard from Margaret, that the Common Fund is really all about enabling and catalyzing transformative tool development. And so what we're focusing here in complementary would be to catalyze the development, standardization and validation, and the use of human-based, and I would emphasize human-based new approach methodologies that will transform the way we do basic translational and clinical sciences. Really, the overarching goals are to better understand and model human health and diseases across diverse populations. This is something that is very challenging in representing the diversity of human population. So that's why we're wanting to seek ideas into how to go about doing this. Also to develop NAMs that provide insights into specific biological processes or disease states, and to be able to move validated NAMs for regulatory acceptance. And then lastly, to have approaches and the tools and technologies developed through this program, essentially to complement traditional mammalian animal models that would make biomedical research more efficient and effective. So next slide would essentially tell you what our major work products are. So as Margaret may have indicated, once a program at the Common Fund gets initiated and approved, it will be at least a 5 to 10 year timeline in terms of how to achieve the program goals. And ultimately, what we want out of this program would be complex and development of complex in vitro models that emulate population diversity, be able to move the area of in silico multiscale modeling systems that simulate both healthy and diseased states, and also to propel in chemical and cell-free systems that capture dynamic changes in the cells and tissues. And lastly, to be able to integrate and combine multiple NAM approaches, as well as their associated data sets, and be able to power that with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Next slide. And so here we are in this strategic planning process. As Margaret mentioned, the NIH Common Fund had spent a good deal of the past several months in the strategic planning process that included listening sessions, landscaping activities, as well as working with other federal agencies working on NAMs. And so this is in some ways the last piece of the strategic planning process, which is a prize competition, primarily to solicit ideas through a crowdsourcing activity. And so this challenge prize competition is seeking to make about $1 million available for up to 20 awards, about $50,000 each for each of the categories that we wanted to get solutions for. And the time frame for submission would be, again, it was opened up in November 7 with the final submission deadline January 11, 2024 at 11:59 Pacific Standard Time. We hope to judge the submissions of solutions in the period of January, and then winners will be announced. So what we're looking here in the chart would be essentially, as I've mentioned, this is a crowdsourcing activity that we are seeking solutions and how to move forward both in chemical, in silico, in vitro, as well as combinatorial NAMs to move things forward that will make much more impact in the biomedical research community. And ultimately, the solutions that you all have proposed, the winning solutions, I should say, will help inform the final implementation phase of the program, which should be launched in 2025 and lasting till 2029. And this would be resulting in more initiatives planning as well as actual program implementation, where we will be issuing a combination of probably grants, cooperative agreements, and other mechanisms to fund the program. Next slide, please. And so in the area of in vitro, complex in vitro models, again, these are bullets that are on the challenge website, and I won't necessarily belabor some of the bullets here, but these are just examples of potential solutions that we're looking forward to from the community in terms of how we could empower complex in vitro models. As I've mentioned, the ability to model complexities of human population diversity, to address especially areas that are of strong needs, such as being able to model the vascular system, neural and microbiome components, being able to have microphysiological systems or tissue chips, be able to emulate immune-related pathways, as well as environmental triggers in inflammatory and in autoimmune conditions, to be able to standardize functional assays to assess physiological relevance of the models, and being able to source out patient-derived cells or tissues towards personalized models. And then being able to also integrate gene editing techniques such as CRISPR to introduce specific mutations into in vitro models to study disease mechanisms. Next slide. So in the area of in silico multi-scale systems and simulations, we're looking for solutions, potential solutions. Again, this is not inclusive, but could be expanded to other solutions as well. But we are looking essentially to simulate health and disease states, especially for chronic inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and other associated disorders, to be able to improve predictive accuracy through incorporation of real-world clinical data, to be able to have generative models to design synthetic biological systems or pathways, to be able to model diversities of the human population, to have computational models that can accurately simulate metabolic reactions in cells, providing insights into disease pathways and etiologies, and then also to have virtual clinical trial approaches that uses simulations to predict how human populations might respond to therapies, and in the future be able to inform clinical trial designs. Next slide. In the area of in-chemical or cell-free systems, we're looking for solutions that could capture and control dynamic epigenetic, biochemical, and genetic changes, to have high throughput capabilities and assays, to query biologically relevant molecular properties, to incorporate advanced analytical methods to assess the full range of metabolic and proteomic changes in reaction conditions, and then to be able to include cell-free expression systems as alternatives to production of biologics, including those with non-natural functionalities. And then also to be able to implement nanotechnology to manipulate molecular interactions at an incredibly small scale. And then in the last category that we have would be towards integrated NAMs. So the solutions we're looking for here would be development of patient or population level digital twins, and that is in combination with other NAMs. Integration of NAMs with diagnostic platforms for informed decision-making in the clinical setting, for example, learning healthcare systems. Integration of AI and machine learning with other NAMs to develop predictive models, to be able to have integrated AI and in chemical NAMs that can capture the vast complexities such as socioeconomic status, changes in diet, chemical exposure, social media interactions, as well as be able to predict how the environment also affects individuals and populations, primarily enabling the study of exposome. And then lastly, multi-tissue microphysiological systems, coupled with AI-based tools and in chemical monitoring components to rapidly evaluate and adjust MPS parameters to model an individual's unique physiology and pathophysiology. Next slide, please. And so this is sort of like the timeline that we have. As already indicated, the challenge was launched November 7th. Here we are, December the 6th for our informational webinar. And just as a reminder, submission deadline is January 11th at 11:59 Pacific Standard Time. And we hope to make that announcements of the winning solutions on February 2024. Next slide. In terms of eligibility, again, this competition is open to individuals and also for teams and entities. And just to make distinctions about the eligibility, I'd encourage you to carefully review what's on the challenge website in terms of eligibility and participation rules, and that's in challenge.gov. For submissions involving team, so these are a group of individuals who are interested in forming a team together. You must identify a team captain who will be responsible for submitting on behalf of this group of individuals. If this turns out to be the winning solution, the team captain will actually be the one who will receive the cash prize in full, and then will, of course, allocate it probably to the team members. Just keep in mind, though, that for any of this prize competition, the winning money will be subject to, may potentially be subject to taxes. And then the team captain must be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident in order to be eligible to receive a cash prize. In terms of submissions that will involve an entity, so an entity would be like an organization, an institution, or a corporation. Some solutions submission, which should identify a point of contact representing that entity or organization. So in this case, if the entity wins, the entity will actually pay the cash prize directly. And in this particular case, the entity must be incorporated in and maintain a primary place of business in the United States to be eligible to receive a cash prize. Next slide. And so in this particular case, there needs a strong caveat about the note about a use of federal funds to be able to provide solutions. So an innovator or solution provider may not use federal funds from either a grant award or cooperative agreement or other transaction awards to develop their challenge submissions or to fund efforts in support of their challenge submissions, unless use of such fund is consistent with the purpose, terms, and conditions of the grant award or cooperative agreement. And so here's some scenarios. If you intend to use federal funds, and if the use of such fund is consistent with the purpose, terms, and conditions of the award, then you must register for and participate in the challenge as an entity on behalf of the awardee institution or organization. And then the prize must be treated as a program income for the purpose of the original grant or cooperative agreement in accordance with the applicable uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards in line with 2 CFR 200. Next slide. Lastly, in terms of evaluation criteria, again, this is well detailed in the challenge.gov website. So I encourage you to peruse that site. But just to give you an overview of the evaluation criteria by which your solutions will be reviewed against, we need to articulate well a clear understanding of the problem and the scientific rationale for your solution. So that means an explanation of why a novel or improved NAM is needed, the potential roadblocks to its development and appropriate solutions have been clearly identified. You need to clearly delineate your team, entity, or in terms of being able to state the type of expertise that you have, whether it be interdisciplinary, that is within the required submission. Also the feasibility, how well does the use of NAMs predict the outcomes in humans, and whether the verification or validation strategy would be sound. And then also we're looking certainly for very innovative ideas that are novel, because we are looking essentially to transform the way NAMs are being currently used and to move them in a much more rapid way. And then lastly, to be able to have a measurable potential impact. So that means a clear articulation of the potential impact on advancing the use of NAMs, especially in the challenge areas that I identified, the in vitro, in silico, in chemical, and then combinatorial NAMs, and the potential for the model application across multiple areas. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Dan Reitz from the HeroX, who is our organization that's helping us to manage and administer the submissions. So Dan?
All right, thanks, Dan. So for this section, I'm actually just going to talk about the submission process, and I'm also going to do that as a quick demonstration on the HeroX platform itself to help really gel up everything that Dan and Margaret have been talking about. So let me bring up our challenge page. Okay. Everyone can see our challenge page now. For everyone, if you have not found the challenge page yet, this is herox.com/complementary, and it's complement-ARIE is how it's sounded out. And what we really want to cover is, so our main page is a summary page. That's the one you're going to land on. And this has all of the information that Margaret and Dan have been covering so far. And there are two major sections that you want to review whenever coming to this page. So you'll review the overview with a great background and history of the competition itself. And the second one is the guidelines section. Dan covered a lot of great information that is very, very important to this types of this competition, including the different categories that we have searching for. All of that is outlined here. We also have our timeline listed, which there are two timeline functions, but we have it listed here in guidelines, and our rules and eligibility. There are some pretty stringent rules and eligibility for the competition, so please make sure that you review this section. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out on the forums or to solve@herox.com. After the rules, we get to our judging criteria. This is outlined as a level playing field for all participants to understand the categories at which we are going to be grading all of the submissions. And we have an outline of the submission form. So you can start looking at what the submission form is going to be asking of you and the restrictions on that submission form before you even start creating your actual submission within the platform. So you can find all of that on our guidelines. Some additional tabs to look through just for awareness. First off, we have our timeline. As stated, this is our second timeline function, and it shows exactly where we are in relation to the full timeline of the competition. So as you can see, our actual submission deadline is January 11th at 11:59, so right before midnight. Our updates tab, I alluded to this at the start of the call. So this is where we just post updates. Anyone following the competition, and hopefully that's all of you, will get an email notification when something gets put in updates. For instance, the next one that is likely going to be put in here is the recording of this webinar. We'll post an update in here. So if you missed it, you can go back and review, and you'll always have it there to check back on. The forum. Forum is a great place for all of us to communicate. If you have questions, you feel free to ask them in here. You can create your own topics if you have those, and we will see this, get the notifications, and we will reply back to you. This is also a fantastic place to go if you're having some questions that you think others may have already had. You can come back here and take a look and see what the conversations and the outcomes of those previous questions are. And we also have our resources tab. Right now, we have one resource logged, and as the challenge develops, if more resources are needed, we will add them. This is a full definitions documentation to help you with understanding the competition and understanding a lot of the acronyms and other terminology that exist. And lastly, our FAQs. This is an ever-evolving list, and you will likely see a lot of the questions that come out of today's Q&A be posted on here. For if we are receiving frequent questions and we know that we need to provide a universal answer to those, we will update our FAQ here, and that will be standard for everyone to review. As Dan mentioned, we're going to cover briefly about actually creating a submission. So right now I'm on the challenge page itself. Again, herox.com/complementary. And I am not registered for the competition. So the first thing I'll do is you can hit the great blue button for solve this challenge. And then it gives you an immediate option on if you want to make a team, join a team, or if you want to compete as an individual. I'm actually not going to select any of these to show you a nice little function. I'm going to immediately go back. And now what it has is I have set up and I'm following the competition, and I can begin my entry, but I can also join a team. So I just wanted to highlight for everyone that joining a team, if you didn't do it at the start, is always a function on the platform. And when I hit join a team, I can look at teams who are out there looking for innovators right now, if I'm just trying to join, or if I have a team already and I'm looking and I need to augment my team, I can search for the innovators themselves to see if they would be a great fit for us. And of course, you can either add yourself to this or you can create a team here. Once you're ready to start inputting your submission into the platform, you can hit begin entry. And as far as creating submission, I gave you showed you where you can see the outline of this. This is the official submission form containing that. So we have all of the different required sections, which you will have already seen. You can go through, fill them out. If you are submitting as a team and you are the team captain, there is a button in here that says submit as team. Make sure you click that. That way your whole group gets added as a team to submit it, and it doesn't come through as an individual. You can fill all the required information out, and you can hit save and preview. Once you have all of the information filled out, you will then get an option to actually hit submit after save and preview. As most websites work, up here at the top, if for some reason there is something in your submission that has not been filled out, that is a mandatory field, there will be a nice big blue box at the top that tells you exactly which field has not been filled out that is preventing you from hitting submit. And that should be about it for our demonstration of the website. Let me get back to our page here. Okay. So with that, again, all requested information has to be submitted no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern time on January 11th. So I hope you're not working that late at night, but coming January 12th, submissions are no longer accepted. So make sure that you have all of those in place. And moving into our Q&A and starting to kick this off, with everything we've talked about today and all the demonstrations I just gave on our platform, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to post those in the forum. And if it's something that's a little bit more project specific or is something you don't necessarily want to ask publicly, feel free to email us at solve@herox.com. So now we are ready for our Q&A. Let me pull up our questions, and moderators or panelists, if you wouldn't mind coming back on camera. Okay. So our first question for the group, will the challenge require preliminary data to be considered for an award?
So maybe I'll start and I'll ask my colleagues to weigh in, but certainly as Dan Tagley mentioned, there's a section here on scientific rationale. So you have to, whether it's your own data or published literature, you probably want to have some sort of information that there's feasibility in the solution, that there's prior, you're kind of building on prior research. I don't know if Dan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Dan Shaughnessy. Yeah, so certainly preliminary data, while certainly helpful, as Dan already indicated, to demonstrate feasibility. Since this is only at the ideation stage, it's not necessarily a requirement, but certainly will be helpful to help convince the evaluators that what you're proposing is going to be feasible and a valid approach. Typically in a prize competition, especially in the ideation stage, this is all just about generating and crowdsourcing ideas. Typically, this would be followed by a reduction to practice competition if that is something that the NIH will decide to follow in subsequent rounds of the solicitation.
Great. Thank you all so much. Second question, will the groups who submit their challenge still be submit to this challenge still be the owners of their intellectual property if awarded?
I can jump in on this one. So the answer, simple answer is yes. Of course, everyone who submits this challenge will retain their intellectual property and ownership thereof. However, two quick caveats to note. So one, by submitting to this challenge, you automatically grant the NIH a non-exclusive license to utilize the full contents of the submission for the purposes of informing the design of ongoing or future programs or activities supported by NIH. So essentially, you agree to allow your content to be utilized for strategic planning purposes within NIH. So it'll be kept confidential, but utilized by our agency for the design of future programs in this area. If you are selected to win a cash prize in this challenge, you also grant the NIH automatically a license to be able to display publicly 3 components of the submission: your title, your executive summary, and your plain language summary. So those may be posted on an NIH website or on the HeroX website when winners are announced. However, all other information contained in your submission will, of course, be maintained confidential. So those are just the 3 components that you'll want to be sure not to provide any proprietary or confidential information in. Again, that's the title, executive summary, and plain language summary. And those are only if you are selected to win a cash prize. I do encourage you, as others have mentioned, to review the rules in detail. And specifically, this is on the participation rule 7 that addresses intellectual property and the licensing requirements. Over.
Right. Thank you, Taylor. Next question. On goal 3, regarding regulatory use and validation, does this aspect imply dialogue with regulatory agencies beyond NIH, example FDA, to ensure methods are compatible with regulatory expectations? And Dan T, this one came across during your particular part of the presentation.
Yeah, so certainly I think regulatory acceptance is a central piece of being able to validate and standardize NAMs. So certainly some familiarity with what it takes to get regulatory acceptance, whether through consultants that may involve some regulatory experts or perhaps direct dialogue with the FDA would certainly be something that would be helpful in your submissions.
Great, thank you. On diverse populations, does this program allow for concierge access to extant specimens or samples from clinical repositories available for sharing through other ICs and NIH programs?
So maybe I'll start, Dan, and then you can. So unlike a research grant, we're not. You could propose that you would be using specific repositories as part of your solution, but I don't know that we need to see a formal arrangement of that in the solution. It's just what access or what specimens or repositories are available to kind of support what you're proposing.
Yeah, I would concur with that because this is, again, just submitting ideas. So that your ideas that would incorporate diverse populations, it would be helpful certainly to identify the biobanks or sources of those biospecimens. But that's not necessarily mean that you as solution providers have access to that. It will be up to the NIH to determine if your solution is the winning solution, that we will certainly pave the way to make that resource accessible to the program. So part of that idea or solution that you provide would be, what are the useful biobanks that is available, currently available, that would address the issue of representation of population diversity. Right.
Great, thank you all. Jumping back as a follow-up to the previous question, is this a competition on what a team has done in this space or an idea to be done?
It's more of the latter, idea to be done.
Thank you. Good one. Do you have to be a competition winner to apply for the program grants funding projects in 2025 through 29?
I can speak to this one on behalf of the Common Fund. So the real answer to this question is that there is no program. This is a strategic planning effort. And so we can speak to what may or may not happen in a hypothetical situation. What I can say is that historically, participating in a challenge like this has no effect on one's eligibility to then participate in a Common Fund program.
And also, I'd like to add, stated in another way, participating in this challenge prize will not be required to submit proposals for a future potential program.
Great. Thank you, Margaret and Tony. Is there a requisite degree of technological maturity to be eligible for this award?
I think this is kind of like the answer is it depends, right? And so, certainly demonstration of in silico computational modeling would be, in some ways have some level of TRL level that might be needed to show that the algorithm is actually something that will work. Perhaps it's already something that might actually already be available commercially. And which has a high TRL level. On some cases, like for in vitro models, it might be just a novel approach on how to model, brain synapse and connectivity, and that might actually be a lower TRL level. And so I think the more critical thing is, how impactful is your solution going to be, your ideas, and how will that be shown to actually be feasible and demonstrated to actually be something that will work in the near term. Do you want to add something, Dan? S?
No, I think you covered it.
Is it possible for different teams to apply when affiliated to the same entity?
I can jump out of this one, and the answer is yes. There are no restrictions on the number of submissions that can come from any one team or any one entity.
Thank you, Taylor. If we have an institution we need to involve, does the point of contact need to be added to the team? And also, does this person need to be the team captain?
Good question. So I'll tackle this one, and please, Margaret, jump in if I don't explain it clearly. So there's two important things here in terms of how you choose to compete in this challenge, either A as a team or B as an entity, as was demonstrated on the previous slide. Now, if you're competing as a team, that means you're not competing on behalf of your employer or your institution. You're competing as an independent group of people who are collaborating together on their submission. Apologies if you hear any background noise. I have an ambulance going by. Oh, there it goes. Okay. And in that case, the team captain, if you are selected to win a cash prize, is paid the prize directly to that person's personal bank account. So that is a big thing to know, that if you're competing as a team, that team captain, if selected to win a cash prize, will be paid the prize in full to their personal account. And that team captain, therefore, must be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident per the statutory authority to run a prize competition. On the entity side, that's when a group of individuals, let's say lowercase t team, is competing in the challenge on behalf of an entity, let's say a university, a company, a nonprofit, any type of organization. If that group of individuals who are competing on behalf of their, let's say, employer, wins the challenge, then the cash prize is awarded directly to the entity. And that entity must be a legally registered or established organization within the United States and have a primary place of business within the United States, again, according to the statute that gives us the authority to run a prize competition. So hopefully that kind of really starkly lays out the difference between competing as an uppercase T team or uppercase E entity. And so if you do plan to compete through your institution, your employer, your company, whatever, then yes, you would need to have a point of contact. However, that point of contact will not be awarded the prize. It will be the entity directly. Over.
Thank you. As you can all tell, this is why we have Taylor here. All right, are submissions treated confidentially, or should we only include non-confidential information?
I think I addressed this earlier, but just to restate it, that if you are selected to win a prize in this challenge, then your title, your executive summary, and your plain language summary may be posted publicly. So you will not want to include any proprietary or confidential information in those sections. However, the rest of the content will remain confidential, but may be used by NIH for strategic planning purposes. Over.
Thank you. Okay. All right, first question, and we get a little series in this one. We'll start with the first one. What are the requirements/limitations for the use of the $50,000 winning prize by the team or entity?
This is a policy question again, so I'll save Margaret on this one and jump in. So a challenge is they reward unrestricted cash prizes. So there are no restrictions into how the prize funds are used. We hope you'll use it, of course, to advance your research ideas, to contribute to the advancement of your concepts. However, there are no restrictions. This is a reward to you for having submitted what will eventually be deemed and judged to be a high value idea for the future of this field. Now, the one caveat is that if you actively use federal funds from a grant, contract, corporate agreement, or OT award in order to develop your submission to this challenge, then per grants policy or OT award policy or contract policy, those funds must be treated as program income. So that's the one caveat to that. Otherwise, everything else is going to be unrestricted cash prizes to your individual account if you're competing as a team and a team captain, or to your entity's account if you're competing on behalf of your institution, company, nonprofit, etc.
Okay. And then I'll jump to the secondary portion of this, which is are these proposals or is the $50,000 supposed to be sufficient to complete a project proposed for this competition? Or are the proposals supposed to be for hypothetical ideas for efforts that would require much more substantial resources to pursue later on?
Yeah, we're all shaking our head to the latter. This is really looking at the ideas. We're not expecting implementation at this point, but you know, and it could cost a lot more to actually implement the idea than 50,000. So really, it's the idea is simply innovative ideas. What's next in the field?
Okay.
Yeah, I would add to that really the 50,000 is to reward the winning solutions for your bright ideas, and it's not really intended to actually implement. If there is a program that will eventually follow on this complementary, that's where the real bucks come in to implement some of this bright, promising ideas.
Okay. And I'll close it out for this one. Taylor, I believe you already answered this question, but we'll get it stated plainly. Since this is for the hypothetical ideas, can the $50,000 prize be used to contribute to that larger effort, or must it be its own sub-project?
Yeah, just already, these are unrestricted cash prizes, so you may use it for whatever purpose you deem appropriate. Again, with the caveat is if you happen to use federal funds to develop this submission to this challenge, then that has to be treated as program income for the original purposes of the original grant or corporate agreement or OT award.
Great, thank you. Okay. Should proposals to the challenge focus on all aspects from development to validation to implementation of a solution, or could they focus on a particular stage?
I can jump in and Dan S. can follow on. I think certainly the more comprehensive the solution from initial development of the technology to validation and regulatory acceptance and perhaps even widespread use would be something that we're looking for. But if there are particular areas that are strong bottlenecks in moving a NAM across, difficult areas, we can certainly entertain solutions for that particular aspect of the problem. Again, it's more of how you clearly articulate what area of NAM's development you're trying to solve, and how your solution will lead to be able to move that bottleneck and eliminating it.
Thank you.
Dan, do you have anything to add?
No, I totally agree that if it, and I like the way you say that, you know, if there's something really holding back a specific NAM from, you know, the complexity that's needed in the wider field, that would be fine. And then on the other hand, as Dan mentioned, if you have a comprehensive idea of how to move the entire pipeline forward, that would work as well.
Okay. Next question. Does the proposal need to include all aspects, which is in vitro, in silico, or in chemico? Or can we focus on just one or two? And I actually have a component to add to this, but first I'll pass it over to Dan or others to kick it off.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as I've mentioned in the presentation, there are 4 categories that we're looking to move forward. Those 4 categories would be in vitro, in silico, and in chemical. And then the last would be a combinatorial approach. And so any aspect of that you plan to submit is fine. So it could be a combination or a focused one on, let's say, in silico or in vitro would be good as well.
Thank you. And what I will add to that for everyone is when you are putting your submission in on the platform, there are actually a section full of checkboxes for each of these 4 categories, and you can select as many as you want. So you can do just one. If you've got a solution that hits all 4, check all 4 of those boxes. Okay. 2 more questions. If anyone else has any, please feel free to get those in our Q&A function. NAMs can be part of an experimental framework to solve a biomedical problem. Could you submit the framework or just the NAM?
I'd say both. I think you have to identify as part of the problem what the experimental framework is and how you would position the NAM technology to be able to address that issue. Would you frame it in a different way, Dan S?
No, I think that's covers it well.
And our last question currently, is the review process similar to traditional R21 or R01 grants? Is there a special panel?
Yeah, so the submissions, the solution submissions will be evaluated by a panel of subject matter experts. It's a two-stage process involving subject matter experts, and then the second stage will be by federal employees who will assess programmatic fit. So it is not a standard CSR, Center for Scientific Review process or peer review process. And so it would be by a group of subject matter experts who will provide what's called objective review as opposed to a peer review.
All right. Okay, everyone, that covers all of our open questions. Anything else from our participants today?
Yes, I wanted to extend a thank you for everyone for joining, and please note that the FAQs from this session will be posted on the website, on the HeroX website. So be sure to send your questions over to solve@herox.com and also take a look at the FAQ page.
Fantastic. Thank you, Margaret. And I also thank everyone for joining us today. We are going to have a final poll here, just talking about your intent to submit to this challenge. We'd love to hear from you and see what you're working on. So again, thank you all so much for the time. We appreciate it. Big thank you to all of our panelists for speaking today and helping to answer all the questions. And I look forward to seeing everyone on the competition page.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks to HeroX team.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.